The chair will now recognize the gentlelady from Alabama, Ms. Roby.
Secretary Clinton, I want to follow up on questions about the night of the attack and decisions made then. You wrote in your book, Hard Choices, that you were directing the State Department response the night of September 11th, 2012, but you also stated that you left your office on the night of the attacks and went to your home in Northwest Washington because you said you knew the next few days were going to be taxing and the department was going to be looking to you. I want to talk about a few things. Do you have a SCIF in your home?
Yes, I did.
Okay, and who else was at your home? Were you alone?
I was alone, yes.
The whole night?
Well, yes, the whole night.
Well, I don't know why that's funny. I mean, did you have any in-person briefings? I don't find it funny at all.
I'm sorry, a little note of levity at 7:15.
Well, I mean, the reason I say it's not
record.
funny is because it went well into the night when our folks on the ground were still in danger. So I don't think it's funny to ask you if you were alone the whole night.
Congresswoman, you asked if I had a SCIF. I had secure phones. I had other equipment that kept me in touch with the State Department at all times. I did not sleep all night. I was very much focused on what we were doing.
Okay, who was at your office when you left? Was Cheryl Mills, your chief of staff, still at the office when you left?
I don't remember. I know that a lot of my staff were
I'm going to go through and name them. We'll see if you remember. Jake Sullivan, was he still there?
Well, yes, they were all there when I left. They were all there.
Okay, Victoria Newland was there when you left?
When I left, everyone was there.
Philippe Ranis was there?
I can give you a blanket answer. When I left.
Well, no, I'm going to ask specifics. Was Patrick Kennedy there?
I'm sure he was.
Was Philip Ranis there?
I don't know. I don't know whether.
What about Stephen Mall?
I'm sure that the core team at the State Department was still there.
Beth Jones?
I'm sure she was.
And Bill Burns and Thomas Nides?
I have no specific recollection of any of the names you've given me because when I left, I knew I would stay in touch, and I do not know how long anybody else stayed at the State Department.
What time did you learn that Sean Smith had died?
That was earlier in the evening.
So that was before you left?
Yes.
Okay, and then what about Ambassador Stevens? Was that before?
It was before I left.
Okay, and then what about his confirmation of his death, before or after you left?
We knew that, yes.
Okay, and what about the recovery of his body? Was that before or after you left?
We got word that we had a sighting of.
Confirmation.
Well, I'm trying to tell you what we knew and how we found out because it was something that we were trying to determine, and we had mixed signals about what we learned. And it was our understanding, and certainly by the time I left, that he was most likely not alive. But I'm not sure exactly when we were able to confirm that because it depended upon getting firsthand information from a Libyan contact.
Okay. Where were you when you learned of the second attack? Were you at home or at the
I was at home.
And did you go back to the State Department when you learned about the second attack, or did you stay home?
I stayed home. I went to the State Department early in the morning. The CIA annex attack, as I recall, was late in the evening, early the next morning, by our time around 5 a.m. or so in Benghazi.
Did you meet with the president that night?
I talked with the president. I did not meet with him.
How many times did you talk to the president?
I talked to the president that evening. That was the only time I talked with him on the 11th, and then I went over to the White House the next morning.
So once. And do you recall what time you spoke to the president? You said that evening. Do you recall more specifically what time?
I think it was late in the evening. I don't know exactly when.
What did you discuss?
I'm sorry, what?
What specifically did you discuss with the president?
Well, I don't usually talk about my discussions with the president, but I can tell you we talked about what had happened during the day. I thanked him for his very strong support because he made it absolutely clear that everyone was supposed to be doing all they could, particularly DOD, to assist us wherever possible. I'm sure I thanked him for that.
What did he say to you?
Again, I don't talk about the conversations I have with the president. We talked about the events of the day and his determination to do everything he could to try to help our people in Benghazi.
Did you meet with Secretary Panetta?
No, I did not.
Did you speak to Secretary Panetta?
The next day.
Not on the 11th?
No.
Okay. Did you talk with General Dempsey?
The next morning I did.
So you did not meet with him or talk with him on the 11th?
Congresswoman, it wasn't necessary. Everybody was doing everything they could think of to do. It's one of the reasons I sat in on the civets.
I'm just trying to figure out if you did or you didn't.
Well, I'm telling you, I sat in on the civets that Congresswoman Sanchez was asking me about because I wanted to talk to the operational people, and they were represented on that civets. They were the ones who were carrying out the orders that they received from the president on down.
What about Petraeus? When did you speak to him? And
I spoke to Petraeus that afternoon because I knew that we had an agreement with the CIA annex, and I spoke with him about an hour after finding out about the attack and after gathering information about what we thought was happening in Benghazi.
did you, your surviving agents were evacuated to Tripoli the morning of the 12th. Did you talk to the survivors either that night or once they arrived in Tripoli?
We did not speak to them directly. We obviously made arrangements for them to be safely evacuated and then to be transported to a hospital facility that we thought was safe from any potential attacks.
Did you talk to him the next day?
No.
Did you talk to him later that week?
No, I did not.
Did you talk to him when they first got back to the United States?
I did not talk to them until they had had an opportunity to be debriefed and to provide information that would help us understand what happened, help the intelligence community, and help the FBI as they were trying to build their case.
How would it have harmed the case that they were trying to build for you, Secretary of State, just to check in on their well-being?
I did check on their well-being. I kept
personally.
Well, I did personally talk with the people who were taking care of them, transporting them to
the
Germany.
survivors. When did you talk to the survivors?
I talked to the survivors when they came back to the United States, and one who was for many months in Walter Reed on the telephone.
Okay, and going back to Panetta and Dempsey, you have stated that they were the decision makers, but you never spoke with them while your people were on the ground.
I'm sorry.
I want to make sure this is clear. Panetta and Dempsey were the decision makers when it came to response. We've already discussed, so I'm not going to get back into that. But what I'm trying to clarify is that they were the decision makers. Your people were on the ground in harm's way, and you never had a conversation with them.
I did not need to. During the turmoil of that afternoon and into the evening, we knew the president had personally told them both in the Oval Office that he expected them to do everything they possibly could do. And I knew that they would then turn to those officers responsible for carrying out that order. They were represented on that civets. That's why I sat in it. And remember, too, Congresswoman, we had a lot of other threats coming in. We were still worried about Cairo.
I understand, but you had your people on the ground that were being attacked. I want to get back to the survivors in the little time I have left. Did you talk to the survivors directly at all?
Yes, I did.
At any point, can you tell us when?
It was kind of a rolling series of conversations. When they came back to the State Department, I met with and talked with them. As you know, their names have never been made public. I don't intend to today.
And can you give me a month?
I'm sorry, what?
A month?
It was, for some of them, it was less time than that. And for one of them, I I talked with him on the phone. I did not get to physically see him until he'd been released from the hospital, and that was early in 2013.
I think, Mr. Chairman, there's two messages here. I think the first message is that is the message that you sent to your personnel the night of the attack, that you went home. They all stayed there and you didn't go back to the next morning. I think the second message that is sent is that you used the FBI's inquiry as an excuse not to check in with your agents who were on the ground, who survived that horrible night.
Premises that were vulnerable and threatened, of course they came to me. I had to make the decision.
Just to ask them how they were. I yield back.
Well, if I could respond, Congresswoman, I think that, again, is part of a theory that you and your colleagues are attempting to weave. It was made very clear that the FBI wanted a fresh and clean opportunity to speak with the survivors, which I totally understand. And in fact, their investigation has led to the charging of at least one person, and I hope we find all of them and bring them to justice.
If somebody did exactly what Mrs. Clinton did, but was one of your lieutenants, or you think one of the lieutenants under the CIA or some other agency that deals with top secret documents, what would you do to those underlings?
I would make sure that they were adjudicated through a security disciplinary proceeding to figure out what are all the circumstances and then what punishment discipline is appropriate. That could range from being terminated to being reprimanded, and then a whole spectrum in between: suspension, loss of clearance. It's a bunch of different options.